Good evening, everyone. We are so delighted to have you with us tonight. We're going to start our evening with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you would join me in standing. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I am now going to come down to this podium. And hopefully Commissioner Clark will join us. So good evening, everyone. Is this on, Steve? Yeah, am I good? Okay. I would like to welcome Mark's family and friends who joined us tonight, but also all of the community members who came out to celebrate this really momentous occasion. We are unbelievably excited to formally swear in Mr. Mark Washington as our next Grand Rapids City Manager. I know, we should clap to that. So Mark comes to us with a wealth of experience in both the public and the private sector. He is a leader in his field and has been recognized for his community engagement and community involvement and leadership. Throughout the entire interview process, and really since he started, and you should have seen, we had quite a marathon day today, I continue to be impressed with Mark's servant heart and authentic leadership. And I can't tell you how excited all of us here on the City Commission, how excited we are to work with him as we look to not only solve complex community issues, but really move our city forward. We are also really honored tonight to have a distinguished guest who came all the way because he too recognizes the importance of this occasion. So we are honored to have with us tonight Mr. Mark Ott, who is a mentor, a friend, and the executive director of the International City-County Management Association. So please join me in welcoming him as he says a few words.
Thank you, Mayor Bliss, commissioners. Good evening to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to you, the Washington family, Mrs. Washington, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. Ardina, Madison, Marissa, it's great to see you all. You know, it's a real honor to be here tonight for two reasons. One is that being here is like coming home for me. I spent many years here a while ago. But the other reason, of course, is because of the occasion, this occasion to swear in the next city manager of Grand Rapids, Michigan, a great city in its own right. I am honored to have the opportunity to speak on this occasion about someone who is a dear friend of mine. Mark and I go back many years. In fact, I had the occasion first to meet Mark when I was appointed assistant city manager in Fort Worth, Texas. And at that time, Mark was working in the Human Resources Department, if I recall right, Mark serving as the benefits manager. And that was sort of a mid-level management position in what is a very large organization. But what I remember about Mark in those early days was when I would see him speak, either at a meeting of the executive team or when he would be speaking with an audience and to the council about some aspect of the city's benefits program. And what stuck out about that was how silent the room was whenever Mark was speaking. When Mark was speaking, no one talked. They paid attention. They paid attention because he was such an expert at what he was doing in the city of Fort Worth. What I could see, it didn't take very long at all, is that Mark was one of these rare individuals that as soon as you see them, no matter what they're doing, you recognize that there's more. You know, you recognize that they're capable of more than what you're seeing at that moment. And that's what I saw in Mark in those early days. And as time passed, of course, we became friends. We weren't just colleagues, we became friends. Our families got to know each other. We both had young kids at the time. His kids are still pretty young. Mine are older than his. But we got to know each other as families. And our relationship, our friendship grew. We developed sort of a mentor-mentee relationship. And there were times when Mark and I would sit and we would be talking about the future. Some about mine, but a lot about his future. And I can remember on one occasion talking to Mark about seeing more in him. And that he should not underestimate himself. And I said, you know, every now and then it's important that we test our mettle. You remember that, Mark? That we test our mettle. And the way that that manifested itself in regard to that conversation is that Mark and I decided to select some opportunities out there in other cities that he might apply for to kind of test his mettle, to see where he could compete in the marketplace, in the industry, the human resources industry that he was in. And so we did that. Applied to a number of different cities. I don't remember them. It's been a long time. But ultimately what happened was that Mark was offered a job. Mark was offered the position of Human Resources Director in a city of some size, as I recall. So mind you, he was the benefits manager, mid-level management position in Fort Worth at that time, and some city saw what I saw, and I know what others saw, even though he wasn't being recognized for that given the position he held in Fort Worth. They saw it too, right, that he was capable of much more, and they wanted him to have that leadership position in their organization as Human Resources Director. Well, I can tell you the city of Fort Worth got wise to that, recognizing what they had, who they had, the expert that they had, and so they made Mark a retention offer, as they say, and Mark was promoted to Assistant Human Resources Director in Fort Worth and continued to excel in his field. And sometime after that, I had the privilege of leaving there and going to Austin, Texas to serve as their city manager. And after being there just a little while, I had need for a human resources director. Austin, Texas, for those of you who don't know, is the 11th largest city in the country. And when I left, about 14,000 employees and $3.8 billion budget, I had need for a human resources director. And the first person that came to mind was Mark. It was Mark Washington. But being the kind of person he is, where I could have simply reached back and grabbed Mark and put him in that position, he was insistent upon competing. You know, competing. That's a whole nother story, his competitive spirit. I understand that folks in the police department and the fire department already are aware of his competitive spirit, and there are some challenges that have been made that I'm going to be interested to hear about over time. But he wanted to compete, and he did. And it was a rigorous process that, like competing for a city manager's job, lasted more than a day. And of all of the panels and the other groups that were part of that process, right, with respect to every one of them, including my executive team, Mark was the number one choice. There was no ambiguity in the feedback that we got back about who would best serve the city of Austin as Human Resources Director. Again, someone who had the ability and capacity far past where he was at that time. As time passed, I had reason to appoint an acting assistant city manager. Again, I didn't have to think too long. I knew I had the right person on my executive team, and it was Mark Washington, and so I made Mark an acting assistant city manager. And he was in that position for more than a year, as I recall, and time had passed, and my time was coming to an end in Austin, and because I believe he had earned it, you know, by the way that he did the job as an ACM in the capital city of Texas. Before I left, I appointed Mark and made his position as assistant city manager permanent. And he had been in that role until he was appointed to this position. Along the way, going back to when I was in Fort Worth, I learned that while Mark was working hard as a benefits manager and then as an assistant human resources director, I learned that Mark was in school, believe it or not, in the midst of doing all of that, in seminary school. And he had done all of the work with the exception of finishing his dissertation for his doctorate from the seminary school, and I had the privilege and honor of seeing him complete that and attend his graduation. I tell you those stories because underneath it all is a story about the man that he is, because that's really what we're talking about. It's not just the city manager, the next city manager of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We're talking about the man that he is. We're talking about his character. We're talking about his compassion that he brings to the work that he does and in his engagements with people that he serves, both as a public servant and as a member of the clergy. His empathy, his interpersonal skills. You know, Mark has the ability to see past where he is at any given time. He has that kind of insight. Mark has the capacity to elevate people. Mark is an authentic leader. He is a courageous leader, and I think in the world today that's what people are looking for, right? I mean, you know it when you are in the presence of authentic leadership, don't you? You know it when you hear it, you know it when you see it, and you feel something when you're in the presence of it. That's how Mark makes people feel. That's how he makes me feel. You know, Mark has the capacity, and he did it in our organization, to help create an environment that encourages people to pursue their greatest potential in all things. The values that he believes in when he's in the pulpit and when he's at work, there's no demarcation there. It's the same for him, that set of values. It's grounding, right? And you can rest assured that in his new role here as the city manager of Grand Rapids, Michigan, that he brings that. That's the foundation that he stands on. That's the foundation upon which he will lead this great city. And it is a great city. And he's a great, great leader. And so I'm proud to stand before you today to recognize my friend, my colleague, Mark Washington. You know, those of us who rise to a position like that, we don't do it by ourselves. I think we all know that. You know, we are also grounded in the love and support that we get from our families, from our mother and from our wives, our partners, our kids, and other family members and close friends who I'm sure are also in this room tonight. And without that kind of support, you know, the kind of leadership and responsibility that Mark has taken on and is taking on as of this swearing-in ceremony is a serious thing and an important thing. And I believe that Mark is capable of it, more than capable of it. He will serve you well, Mayor. Mark is a great leader, and Mark, I am so, so proud to be here today, to see you, to watch you be sworn in. Congratulations, my friend. Well deserved.
Thank you, Mark. And it is a joy to have you back in Grand Rapids, even briefly. So now I would like to ask Mark Washington to come forward, and we'll do the swearing in, and then he'll say a few words. So I think I'm going to come over here, and you're welcome to have your family join you and hold the Bible if you like. All right. Let's point this way. So I, Mark Washington,
Mark Washington,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the Office of City Manager
of the Office of City Manager
in the City of Grand Rapids
in the City of Grand Rapids
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for giving me this opportunity. And my having to follow those remarks, I should just say ditto and sit down. But I want to thank this commission. I want to thank Mayor Bliss, Commissioner Jones, Kelly, Lanier, Moody, O'Connor, and Repart. Thank you all for your confidence in me as city manager. As I believe, based on the Historic Society, the 28th city manager of the city. I know from having spent time with all of you that you take your elected office very seriously and that you are committed public servants. And you did not take lightly your responsibility of appointing a city manager. Beyond all the other tasks that you have in terms of setting policy and approving budgets, one of the most important decisions that you can make as a governing body is appointing your chief executive officer and city manager. And I am so honored that after all the candidates, the very highly qualified candidates that you had the chance to meet, that you decided to select me as your city manager, and I thank you. I recognize that I am coming into a great organization where there have been great women and men who have led this city long before my arrival and continue to do so. I must pause at this time to acknowledge those that have contributed so much to this city and have occupied the corner office on the 6th floor long before I have. I want to first thank the interim city manager, Eric DeLong, for his interim leadership while the search was ongoing. And I also want to recognize the previous city manager, Mr. Greg Sundstrom, who I don't know if he's here tonight, but I did have the opportunity to talk with him and have met him on occasion before, and also previous to that, city manager Kirk Kimball. I want to thank them for all of their work that they have done to commit to this profession. I know the infrequency of turnover that has happened on the 6th floor, so I am grateful and honored to have been chosen to be in this organization. And I have my feet firmly planted on the 6th floor. It is clear to me that this city is a gutsy city, one that has worked through challenging times and difficult situations and has always come out better on the other end. Resilient, more innovative, more creative, and more solutions-oriented, and has always found a way to get things done. And as I've heard by so many people, have found a way to yes. There is no doubt in my mind that Grand Rapids is one of the premier cities, Mr. Ott, in not just Michigan as the second largest city or the Midwest, but in all of America. And I have the benefit of providing leadership to this great place, and my family and I have the benefit of calling this home. So I don't feel like I'm at work. I feel as if we are home. I know the work of government that lies ahead of us to address all the challenges of a growing metropolitan area, the same challenges that I had the privilege to face with Mr. Ott, those challenges of infrastructure issues and development and water quality, housing, homelessness, preservation of our historic assets, enjoyment of arts and culture, mobility, regional partnerships, and preventing further erosion of our local rights, improving the police and community relations, ensuring there is affordability for all residents, and improving the quality of life that everyone experiences. These are challenges are not too great for all of us collectively. And I look forward to solving these challenges with you. The services that our residents in this community deserve should be of the highest quality and level. But I recognize today that they cannot be performed without the commitment of many of the city employees, some who are here tonight, both sworn and non-sworn, who make sacrifices as part of this great city. I commit to engage them and value them, along with both our residents as well as our employees. There is no city that can offer great city service without great servants. And I am proud to be not only the leader of our community, but the manager of this organization and work along with them. It is not lost with me that this moment is a defining historical moment in our city. James Baldwin used the term the burden of representation, which means that the blackness of an individual is not just reflective of an individual, but there's a burden of the people that one represents. W.E.B. Du Bois called it a double consciousness. And to say that the first African American city manager is here today is not to reduce the importance of being city manager just to African American, but it is to recognize the significance of the moment. Not that it's inferior to other moments, but it's to say something about the realization of progress of our democracy that has often been advertised but seldom fulfilled. Grand Rapids is now doing its part in so many ways, not only with this appointment, but in so many other ways, to make sure that the realization of our democracy does come to fruition. Abraham Lincoln referenced in his famous Gettysburg Address the phrase, "the government of the people, by the people, and for the people." And I am here today to recognize, as part of being city manager, the people that he referred to. The people means the people with wealth and the people in poverty. People means the people who have power and the people who are without voice, who need the people with power to give them voice. People represents those who pay taxes and fees and deserve and demand the highest quality of services from our government. That is my pledge to you, to remember that this is the people's government, the people's business, the citizens of Grand Rapids who are the owners of this government, who elect our leaders, who to establish policy, and who have then entrusted me as the professional manager of this organization to operate in a transparent, engaging, innovative, ethical, and efficient manner at all times. I realize that this is historic, but I don't realize that I have come this far all by myself. For I saw the list of the 28 city managers that preceded me, the 27 that preceded me, and someday my name will follow them. But I believe and have said before that when my name is printed, there should be an asterisk by my name. The asterisk is not to denote the ethnic accomplishment of the appointment, but it's to denote other things that are not found in the job title or my race. The asterisk should denote that he would not be city manager if not for the educators, the neighbors that I grew up with, the church members who prayed for me in the little projects in Port Arthur, Texas. The people, my mother who dropped me off the first day of college with $20 in my pocket and didn't come back until 3 years later. That's a true story. When I graduated. Bob Terrell, who was the first African-American city manager in Fort Worth, my first professional administrator job, who could not be here today because he passed. He was a trailblazer in his own right. If it were not for Bob Terrell, I would not be here. If it were not for, the asterisk would note, if it were not for Mark Ott, who is a trailblazer in his own right, as the first African-American executive director of the International City County Management Association, who also was the first African-American city manager to be appointed in the history of Austin, Texas, who I had the privilege of working with and for, who in his tenure saw the city grow by 200,000 residents in a period of 9 years, from the 14th largest to the 11th largest city in the United States. And I had the privilege to see eyewitness of the kind of integrity, of the kind of capability, of the kind of courage that it takes to be city manager. Now, I want to thank you, Mr. Ott, for believing in me at times when perhaps I did not even believe in myself. You encouraged me, you challenged me, you supported me, and I thank you. You will always be my city manager. You will always be, most importantly, my friend. The asterisk would also note he would not be city manager in Grand Rapids, Michigan, if not for the numerous of directors, employees, managers, colleagues that I had the privilege to serve with in my career in Austin and in Fort Worth. And certainly he would not be city manager if not for the elected officials who I likewise had to serve with in both of those cities. The asterisk would also denote that he would not be city manager in Grand Rapids, Michigan, if not for the trailblazing accomplishments like Lyman Parks, who broke the glass ceiling as the first African-American elected commissioner and mayor on this commission, and other trailblazers who sit among the dais with me, like Commissioner Lanier, who is the first African-American female elected person on this commission, or our very own mayor, who is the first female mayor elected to this commission. It is that type of progress that allows me to stand here today and realize the dream of equity that so many who've gone before me were not able to do. The asterisk would have to denote that he would not be city manager if it were not for all of the commissioners who I serve, who I find a privilege to work for, who gave me an opportunity to serve this community. So I thank you today. But I would have to put a double asterisk by my name, because I would not be city manager if it were not for the Lord that was on my side. I would have to put a triple asterisk next to my name and note that I would not be city manager here today if it were not for a supportive family who encourage and supports me even through the best and challenging times of life. I want to thank my wife, Ardina, my daughters, Marissa and Madison, my sister, Pajua, and my mother, Rose, for being here today. I want to specifically thank my mother, who grew up speaking English as a second language, because her mother, my grandmother, spoke hardly any English, could barely write her name. But my mother ensured she did whatever it took to raise me right as a single black woman. I want to thank her. There were times I didn't know what she was doing to make provisions for me. She worked countless hours at McDonald's. I remember the days, flipping hamburgers, mopping floors, cleaning toilets. I want to thank her publicly on this occasion for every hamburger she flipped, for every toilet she cleaned, for every floor that she mopped, because it was that kind of work ethic that she instilled in me that made me the man that I am today, and I want to thank her. My mother always taught me to be a person of my word, and if you're going to say something, you need to do what you say. So I am saying today that I am going to do everything in my ability to make sure that Grand Rapids is recognized and respected as a world-class city, a best-managed city, and never forget the neighborhoods for which it is compromised. You have my word. Thank you.
He's pretty remarkable, isn't he? So with that, that is the end of our swearing-in ceremony. We have about 25 minutes before our official meeting starts at 7. So this is an opportunity for you to chat with Mark. There's some refreshments out in the hall. You are welcome to help yourself to those. But the next 25 minutes or so, it's just a time to come together as a community and congratulate him. So again, thank you all for coming. Mark, thank you. What a joy to have you here. To Mark's family, we welcome you. We're so delighted to have you in Grand Rapids and to really welcome you into the city family. So everyone have a good night. Enjoy this break before we start back at 7.